What do Harry Potter, Moana, and Luke Skywalker have to do with interviews? Well, more than you think. Hang around and I'll explain. Studies show that over 60% of interviewers make a decision on whether they are going to hire somebody within the first few minutes. And to be honest, when I heard that statistic, I was a bit surprised because in my experience, it's within the first few minutes. And this is why the tell me about yourself interview question is so critical for you to get right. Over my 15 years as a recruiter and now recruitment business owner, I have sat in on literally thousands of interviews. And there is one thing I know for sure, and that is that a strong start in an interview is a predictor of a strong finish. So in this video, which is the first in my interview series, I want to share with you a proven framework that will highlight your story and your strengths, avoid some of the common pitfalls that I see, and set you up for success to create a lasting impression. And I'm going to use a surprising storytelling technique that you may not expect to see in an interview. So hang around and I'm going to explain that shortly. But if you are somebody who is interested in improving your career, if you're searching for a job, if you just want to get better at interviews, then you've landed in the right place. I'd love it if you hit the subscribe button. This is a new channel, so any support that you could give me would be wonderful. Any feedback in the comments, I'd literally love to hear from you. But before we learn how to respond to this question or how to structure your response, I think it's really important that we reflect first on why this question is actually asked, because context is everything. Context is going to help you tailor your response. It's going to help you feel more comfortable in the moment. From my perspective as a recruiter, I'm asking it in a really open-ended way because I'm interested to see where you go with it. How long will you speak for? Will you be succinct, or are you going to go on a rambling story for 20 minutes? Are you going to tell me about the highlights, or are you going to tell me about every single piece of detail in your career? Ultimately, I'm assessing whether you're somebody I want to work with, whether you're going to represent me well when I send you to my client. I'm also looking for opportunities where I can coach you or help you improve in your interviews as well. The panel, however, or the interview panel or the individual that you're meeting, I think they're looking for something a little bit different. So they're looking for you to tell your story in a really succinct way. And what I mean by succinct is 3 to 5 minutes max. And what they want to hear is the highlights of your story, what you've learned, but most importantly, how it relates to why you're sitting in front of them, how your skill set, how your experience is all coming together for this particular role that you're meeting them for. They're assessing your ability to distill your story. They're observing how you set the tone for the conversation and also how you communicate with influence. Because let's not forget that interviews are an act of influence. It's about influencing the other person or the panel that you're the right person for the job. And I see it time and again. People forget that this is the first opportunity to create a lasting impression. So let's dive into a framework for how you can do this in your next interview. I want to introduce you to the idea of the hero's journey. Now, this is a storytelling technique that has been used for centuries. You will see it in classic myths and modern movies. Harry Potter is a great example of the hero's journey, but equally it applies to The Lion King, Frodo in The Lord of the Rings, Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, and even Moana. At its core, the hero's journey is about transformation. It's about how somebody starts in one place, faces challenges, grows, and then comes out the other side changed. Here's a quick breakdown of that structure. Okay, so in the beginning, we have the call and the hero begins their journey. Something happens to them that sets them on their path. And then we'll have some early challenges where they face obstacles and start to learn what it takes to succeed. Along the way, they'll find mentors who guide or teach them and help them along their way. But then we reach the abyss, which is a turning point, and it's where a pivotal moment or a major challenge happens that forces growth. And then the transformation occurs. This is where our hero overcomes the challenges, they gain new skills, traits, or perspectives, and then the return, where they come back with newfound strength, ready for what's next. Let's take a look at Harry Potter's journey in the Sorcerer's Stone or the Philosopher's Stone, depending on where you are in the world. But it's a tiny film franchise, so I'm not sure if you've heard of it. Okay, so the call is when Harry discovers that he's a wizard and he enters a new world of possibilities. He then faces early challenges, adjusting to life at Hogwarts, learning magic, and enters a world of new possibilities. Along the way, he meets his mentors in Dumbledore and Hagrid, who guide him, show him the ropes, and help him grow. But the turning point, it's when he confronts Voldemort and he realizes his inner strength. And this is where the transformation begins. So Harry becomes more confident, courageous, and aware of his role in the larger fight. And the return is where he returns to the Dursleys at the end of the school year with newfound knowledge and a sense of purpose. The structure is universal. In The Lion King, Simba overcomes self-doubt to return and claim his place as a leader. Luke Skywalker learns from Obi-Wan and Yoda how to become a Jedi and restore balance to the galaxy. Frodo faces immense challenges and personal growth in order to destroy the One Ring. And Moana discovers her inner strength and becomes the leader her people need. Now, you'll see the hero's journey repeated again throughout the Harry Potter franchise, but what I want you to take away from it is how it can apply to your career and how you talk about your career. Your career can be told in the same way. It's not just a list of jobs or a checklist of achievements. It's why you do things. It's the challenges that you faced along the way. It's the people who guided you and shaped you. It's the turning points where you made a major realization about yourself and were changed for the better or improved your skill sets in some way. And using the hero's journey makes your answer so compelling because it taps into a universal narrative that we are all familiar with, regardless of whether we're aware of it or not. So you're probably wondering, how do I actually use the hero's journey? So let's break it down. So now that you know the structure, let's think about how we can apply it to your own story. So I want you to ask yourself these questions. What got you started in your career? Was there an interest that encouraged you to study what you did? A life event that set you on the course that you were on? A learning, an aha moment in your life? In the next step, I want you to think about the challenges that you faced early on. Was there a steep learning curve? Was there a really difficult project? Were there mistakes that you made that taught you important lessons? The next bit is all about the mentors. So who were the people that guided you along the way? What did you learn from them? It could be a colleague, a boss, a relative, a grandparent, a friend. But who were they? How did they guide you? What was the impact that they created in your life and in your career story? Now, the difficult bit, the bit none of us like talking about, the abyss or the turning point. Now, I'm not suggesting here that you need to be sharing the worst moment in your life, the worst moment in your career. But what I do want you to do is think about a major turning point, a major insight or eye-opening moment that you had that changed your perspective on business, on your profession, on your career. And that's what you want to share. It could be a big success, it could be a failure, but it's something that taught you resilience, something that changed you as a professional and shows your growth and learning mindset. The next step is about the transformation. So taking what had the impact on you in the abyss, what did you learn from it? What was the transformation that you undertook? Who are you now as a person as a result of that experience? And how can you share that with them? It's embedding that transformation. It's embedding the learning mindset. It's embedding the growth mindset that you bring. And finally, the return. So how does this all connect together for who you are today and why you're sitting in front of those people? Why do you want this role and how is who you are today connected to that motivation? Now, you don't need to spend too long in answering these questions, but I do think it is helpful to sit down and do some reflection ahead of constructing this answer. And yes, it's important to practice it. So what I find most people do when they are first doing this is they will put together an answer that probably will take them somewhere around 10 to 15 minutes to deliver. So what I want you to do is get that down to 3 to 5 minutes by doing the following. So firstly, I want you to set up a timer for the first time and just speak. Speak for as long as you feel is necessary. And then at the end, look at how long you've spoken for and try and improve that by a minute each time by cutting out things that are extraneous or not exactly needed for your story until you get that down to under 5 minutes. A second way that you can achieve this or makes it easier to achieve this is by looking into a mirror when you are speaking. So deliver that speech to yourself, pay attention to your body language. Are you smiling while you're speaking? Smiling will help you build confidence with your answer. And also looking at yourself is going to make you slightly self-conscious in the beginning, but once you get used to it, you will be more articulate and able to deliver that more succinctly each time that you deliver it to yourself. Your goal in the end is to make it clear, concise, and compelling. You're also going to want to avoid some really common mistakes or pitfalls that I see people making all the time. So let's talk about those. I'm going to focus on the most common pitfalls that I see here. So the first is where somebody is using too generic language rather than anything specific. For example, it kind of seems like they could be interviewing for any job. They haven't integrated anything about the organization or the role into their response. And so you don't need to go over the top with this, but a few subtle references maybe to something that you've read online about that organization, or what you found interesting in their strategy, or something that you've read in a media release can go a long way to building connection and helping show them that you are there for a reason and that you're not just there to get any job. So the next thing I see people do is use passive or negative language. And what I mean by that is when you're asked to tell the panel about yourself, they might say things like, well, you've read my resume. Do you have any specific questions? It is a bit aggressive and it is not respecting the process itself. So try and avoid saying things like, well, as per my resume or in my resume I wrote, can come off as a bit defensive. They're asking this because anyone could have written your resume and they want to hear how you're going to communicate and sell yourself and influence them ultimately. So try and avoid that sort of passive aggressive defensive language. The other thing people can do in this negative context is really trash their old employer. So say really quite bad things about them. And that one might be a bit more obvious for you to not do, but be mindful that if you've had a really negative experience where you are, that will influence the language that you're bringing to the conversation. So try and be really mindful of it because you don't want to be projecting that poor experience that you've had. Equally, sometimes people are not using overly negative language, but it still comes through. So they spend too much time focusing on why they want to leave their current organization or what they don't like about their current situation, rather than focusing on what is it about this opportunity, what is it about this organization that is attracting you. And I like to give this example because I feel like it's a bit universal and we can all relate to it. But imagine you're dating somebody and when you are on your first date with them, you spend the whole time talking about how awful and horrible your ex was, rather than focusing on getting to know that person, telling them what you like about them, what you're finding interesting or attractive. You're probably not going to get invited on a second date when you are focused on your ex. The other thing that can go wrong is that people either undershare or overshare details. So what I mean by that is you want to find the sweet spot, the Goldilocks spot of what to share. If you are telling too many really personal information, it can make you seem unprofessional, but likewise not giving any personal anecdotes can make you seem maybe a bit cold or disengaged. So you want to find the right balance of sharing a bit about who you are, but not oversharing. What I mean by that is it could look a bit like this. When I was a student, I was always deeply curious and I had a wonderful science teacher who ignited my interest in biology. And so that led me to pursue a career in nutrition. The other thing that can happen is that people can start rambling without a clear focus and the interviewer is left wondering when they're going to stop talking or where the story's going or how it might be related to the question that has just been asked. But that's not going to be you because you're going to use the hero's journey and avoid that whole situation. And lastly, candidates forget to end with a strong finish. So they might awkwardly trail off at the end of the conversation or ask something that projects that they're not confident in their own answer by saying things like, did I answer that correctly? Have I given you enough detail? Rather than, would you like to hear any more? Which is a much stronger response, or even better. And that's why I'm here today, because I'm really interested in this opportunity and I think that I'd be able to add a lot of value. That's it. Then be silent. Give the panel an opportunity to ask any clarifying questions if they're interested. They will, so give them space to do that. Don't fill the empty space with more words. Let the panel help you by jumping in and guiding you. Remember, the hero's journey is all about having a structure that helps you feel as comfortable as possible when you're in that interview room. Because let's face it, many of us get nervous in an interview. Often it's the first question that triggers our nerves the most. And the first question is likely to be, tell me about yourself. So if you use the hero's journey framework, you're going to have a really effective way to tap into a narrative that most of us are familiar with, that resonates deeply with us, but equally will highlight to them how you've grown in your career, what some of the learnings and the experiences that you've had have looked like, but most importantly, how all of that relates together to you as the individual in front of them today who's the right fit for the job. Remember, no two stories are the same, so own what makes you unique and make sure you connect it to the role that you're applying for. And if you're interested in a free checklist that will help you prepare for an interview from start to finish and make sure that you haven't missed anything, then check out the description below. I've got a link in the comments to that free download. And if you found this video helpful, hit the subscribe button and I'll see you next time.